Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. My name is Kevin. Well, I love to bake on our homestead. I probably do most of the baking on our homestead. Sarah is very good at it as well, but it's something that I really enjoy, so a lot of times it's just something that I do on my own. Today I'm going to teach you how to make something that for a long time I shied away from making because I thought they were super complicated and would take a really long time. And that is English muffins. English muffins are one of the things that we used to buy a lot before we became homesteaders and before we started raising our own food. But we gave up buying those from the store because, to be honest, these days we just don't buy bread items at the store. In the small town that we live by, organic bread is super expensive, and honestly, the selection of it isn't very good. So we just choose to make it all at home ourselves. Now in the past, I've showed you how to make a couple different things that we've also given up from the store. The first was homemade bagels. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. The other was my homemade crunchy bread, which you guys have said you've tried and has been fantastic. That's a recipe that we love, especially in the winter as the weather cools down and we have a lot of soup and things like that. That crunchy bread goes great with it. But English muffins are something that we love to have for breakfast. We love to have egg sandwiches, maybe even like an egg McMuffin, but healthier at home. So today I'm going to teach you how to make those. I searched for a long time to find a recipe that I liked before I started making these. And like I said, I shied away from making them for quite a long time because most of the recipes that I found took several hours with different rises, and you had to bake them a certain way, and it just seemed time consuming. And to be honest, we're so busy here on our farm that I don't plan things a whole day ahead or several days ahead, sometimes not even a couple hours ahead. And that's why this recipe is great. It takes less than 2 hours to make an entire batch, and they're so easy. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing that we need to do is get some yeast proofing in our bowl. Now this is a very easy process. All you need to do is take some warm water. In this case we're going to use 1 1/4 cups of warm water. We're going to put that in our bowl, and then we're going to add a tablespoon of sugar. Now I'm using raw organic sugar, but if all you have is regular white sugar, that's fine too. Use whatever you have. So we're going to just mix the sugar into the water until it dissolves. And basically what this is doing is just kind of creating some food for our yeast. Once all of that sugar is dissolved, we're just going to take our yeast and just sprinkle it on top of the water. This is 1 teaspoon of active dry yeast. You can use any kind of yeast that you have on hand, whether it's the fast yeast or the regular yeast, it doesn't matter. You just want to sprinkle it on top. And then we're going to just cover that bowl with a towel, and we're going to let that rest for about 10 minutes until it's kind of bubbly on top. And then we'll be ready to start adding our ingredients into the water. Okay, our timer just went off. It's been just over 10 minutes since we put the yeast and sugar in the warm water, and you can see that it is starting to get a little bit bubbly. That's exactly what you want it to look like. So now to our yeast mixture, we're going to add a teaspoon of salt. Now I'm using pink Himalayan salt, but again you can just use table salt if that's what you have, or you can use sea salt, whatever you have. And then we're also going to add 2 tablespoons of oil. I'm using sunflower oil. You can use melted butter, you can use olive oil, whatever you want. I like sunflower oil because it doesn't really add any taste. And I like these to turn out just, the way that they should. I don't really like the taste of olive oil in things like this. But that's preference. And now we're just going to mix this around just a little bit, just to get that salt and oil, dispersed around. And then we're going to start adding our flour. Now I'm using organic all-purpose flour. You can use regular all-purpose flour. You can substitute some of it with whole wheat flour. I don't make these with whole wheat flour because I just think they turn out better with the organic all-purpose flour. And I also haven't tried them with any of the gluten-free flours, but give it a try. It may turn out just fine. We're not a gluten-free family, but if you are, give it a try and see how they turn out. So we're going to start by adding about half of the flour. This is 2 3/4 cups flour. So we're just going to add about half of it to start and start mixing that around. Now, if you want to do it in your mixer, like I have a KitchenAid, and I do a lot of my baking in the KitchenAid mixer. For some reason with this recipe, I just like to do it by hand. So we're just going to put our flour in. And we're just going to work that around until it starts to form a dough. If you need to add just a little bit more flour, you can. It's going to be a fairly sticky dough, but we're just going to keep working it until it starts to form a dough ball. And you can see that this is starting to come together into a dough ball. Now it's going to be a very soft dough and fairly sticky. That's okay, that's what you want. Again, if you're using whole wheat flour, it'll probably be a little bit heavier, you know, and stiffer than this. But with the organic all-purpose flour, it should look very similar to this. And it's going to be fairly sticky. You're going to add a little more flour when we start to knead it. Alright, so now that our dough is pretty well mixed in our bowl, we're going to put it out onto quite a bit of flour. You can either do this on the counter, or I have this board that I use for kneading dough when I need to knead it. So I'm going to put that onto the board. And again, this is pretty sticky, but there's quite a bit of flour on my board. So I'm actually going to sprinkle a little more flour on top. And we're just going to start kneading it. And you can see even now it's still pretty sticky. It's a very, very thin, fluffy dough. And have some extra flour around because you're going to need to add a little as you go. We're going to knead this dough for about 3 or 4 minutes until it's, you know, very nice and soft and everything is incorporated in well. And just keep adding more flour if you need to. You don't want to add so much that it becomes a really stiff dough, but you don't want it to stick to your board or to your counter or whatever you're using. So whenever I do bread baking recipes on our channel here, I get a lot of questions about my kneading board and what it is and where people can get one. And well, it's nothing special. Honestly, I bought this board probably 10 years ago, and it's just a piece of oak plywood that I bought at Lowe's. It's a, I think, 3 foot by 3 foot board, and you don't want to put any kind of coating on it like a cutting board. You would like oil or something. But for this, I just leave it plain, and the more you use it, the flour kind of works into it, and you know, it works really well. I think it works much better than just doing it on the counter, but sometimes even if I'm doing something fast, don't even get the board out. I just do it on the counter. So, but that's all it is. Nothing that special. Just a piece of oak plywood. Alright, so our dough is done being kneaded. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take another bowl. I've rubbed just a little bit of oil inside of here just so it doesn't stick. And we're going to put our dough ball down inside of the bowl. Now this is the only real long part of this entire process, and it's just passive time. But we're just going to cover it, and we're going to put it in a warm spot for 1 hour or until the dough doubles in size. Now tonight we're supposed to be getting our first snow here in the Ozarks. So we actually have our wood stove going today because it's pretty chilly out. So I'm actually going to set this on a shelf near our wood stove, which is great. In the winter, that's the perfect place to proof bread dough. There we go. That's the perfect spot right next to the wood stove. Nice and warm up here. This is actually a cabinet that was made by my great-grandpa. And a bowl from my grandma. So it's kind of a nice family thing here. So we're going to leave that there. We're going to let that double in size, and then we'll be back to finish them up in the kitchen. Alright, it's been a little over an hour, and our dough has definitely doubled in size. You can see that it is really nice right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to get ready to actually form it into the English muffins. Now, what I'm going to do is kind of divide my board here in half. If you don't have a board, you can lay down a piece of parchment paper on your counter. But what I'm going to do is just take a little bit of corn flour and shake it out here on my board. This is just to help it from sticking more than anything. Now, because we grind our own, this is really finely ground corn flour. You probably can't buy that in the store, but cornmeal is what you want. So just get some cornmeal, and all it does is stop it from sticking. So when you buy English muffins in the store, you can always tell that they have a little cornmeal on them. That's what it's for. On the other half of the board, I'm going to put a little more just regular flour. And then we're going to take our dough and we're going to get it out of this bowl onto the board, and we're going to knead it just a couple times just to get some of that flour on the outside so it's not super sticky. We're going to kind of make it into a long thing here. And now we're going to cut this into 10 equalish parts. Remember my saying here on the Homestead. It doesn't have to be perfect, it needs to be Homestead perfect, which means pretty good. So we're going to form that, and we're going to cut that into 10 equal parts. Alright, so we're going to cut that in half. Now we're going to try our best to just cut this into 5 fairly equal parts. Remember, it doesn't need to be perfect. If you want perfect, go buy them at the store. They have a machine that does it. Alright, so once we have that cut into 5 equal parts, we're going to kind of roll them into a little ball. And then we're going to put them over here on the cornmeal and flatten it out. I don't know, to, you know, an inch, half inch thick, whatever. We're going to just do that with all 10 of them that we're about to cut. And these are going to turn out so good by the time that you're done that you're actually going to be a little bit glad that they're not perfect, because otherwise people would accuse you of just going to the store and buying them. That's how good they're going to be. So you want them to look a little bit homemade. Alright, so now that all of those are formed, what we're going to do is just take our towel one more time. We're going to cover these up, and we're going to let them sit for 20 minutes. Now during that time, we need to get a pan heated up on the stove. So I'm going to go grab my favorite pan that I like for using for this, and we'll get that heated up on the stove. Alright, so I'm going to use my biggest cast iron pan. But if you don't have cast iron, that's okay. You can use whatever kind of pan you have, and you can do these in several batches. Now, I can normally do 8 or all 10 of these at once in this big pan, but that's okay. You can do them, you know, do 5 at a time or whatever. We're going to put this on the stove. We're not going to turn it on quite yet because these need to sit for 20 minutes. But in about 10 minutes, I'm going to turn this on, and we're going to let this heat up. You want to do it on a very low heat. Now the main reason that I really like this recipe is because you do all of the cooking right here in the pan on the stovetop. You never actually put it in the oven. Other recipes that I've looked at first have you cook them a little bit in the pan, then transfer them to a baking sheet, then put them in the oven, and it's a big time-consuming process. But this recipe works out perfectly just on the stovetop. So we're going to let these wait until my timer here gets down to 10 minutes. Then I'm going to turn this onto a low heat. The key is you don't want to do this too hot. You want it to be a nice low heat. Alright, so we have just a couple minutes left before the English muffins are ready to start cooking. I've had this pan on now for quite a while. Well, since it got down to 10 minutes. It's getting pretty warm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a little bit more oil. And I'm going to brush my pan with it. Now, if you just have, you know, cooking spray and you want to use that, that's fine. We don't use, you know, the cooking spray, so I'm just going to brush it with a little bit of oil. This is just some more sunflower oil. And now we're going to get ready to put our English muffins in here. This is good and warmed up at this point, but again, it's on low heat. The highest that I had it just to get it warming up was, you know, 1 notch above low, but now it's really warmed up, so we're going to put our English muffins on. Alright, so I'm going to bring the English muffins over. I'm going to put them on the pan one at a time. And I'm going to try to get as many as I can on here. Now they are going to puff up a little bit as I put them on. Alright, so that's as many as I'm going to get on this first batch. Now, you want to cover these. I don't have a lid for this big pan, so what I actually use is my pizza pan. And I just put that on top like that. That just helps hold in some of the heat. If you have a big pan that has a cover, great, that's even better. But this works good for what I use. So, we're going to put these on. I'm going to set a timer now for 8 minutes. I'm actually probably going to check them a couple minutes before that just to make sure they're not getting too done. But as soon as they're kind of golden brown on the bottom, I'm going to flip them over. So we're going to leave these just as they are for now until they get golden brown. Alright, so we're down to 2 minutes. I'm going to check them and just see how they're doing. You can see that they've definitely puffed up from what they were when we put them in there. But let's take a look at one. They're getting a little bit brown on the bottom. But I'm going to flip them back over. I'm going to leave them just like this for a few more minutes. At least until the timer goes off. Now, the more times that you make these, the more you'll just kind of know when they're ready. So, it's kind of a guessing game. The times that I'm giving you are just a starting point. So, just do your best to make sure that they're done, but not too done. Alright, the timer's gone off again. Now, I did move the one out of the center over to the side just because on my pan, most of the heat is right here in the center. So now we're just going to flip all of these over. I'm going to use my hand. I do better like that than I do with the spatula. This is the one that was in the center, and you can see it was getting more done than the rest. We're going to flip all of these over. We're going to cover it back up and we're going to put them on for about another 5 minutes. I'll check them after about 3 or 4 just to make sure, but about 5 minutes total. Cover them back up, we'll set our timer, and we'll see where they're at in 5 minutes. Alright, our timer is just about to go off. Let's see where these are at. Well, you can definitely see that they're a lot more puffed up than they were when we first put them in, and they are looking awesome. Now from here, you just kind of go by how they feel, and they will cook even a little more once they're out of the pan. I think for right now, I'm going to leave these in for about another 2 minutes, just because I feel like they need just a tiny bit more time. So I'm going to cover these back up for 2 more minutes, and then we'll be ready to put the next batch in. Alright, our timer's going off again. This time I think they're definitely going to be done. So, I've actually got one of our cookie sheets here. I'm going to just start taking them off, and you can see just how amazing these look. Now, like I said, they'll keep baking even for a little while after they're off the pan. If you want to use a spatula, that's fine. It's a little bit hot, but after you get used to it, it's no big deal. I've got just a couple more to do. I'm going to put those on. We're going to do them exactly the same way, and then we'll see them all when they're all done. Alright, these last 3 are done, and they look awesome. We're going to take them off, bring them over to our pan. And look at that, all 10 of them are done. I really wish you guys could smell just how amazing these smell. We're going to let them cool for just a few minutes, and then we'll cut one open and we'll see just how great they look on the inside. Alright, so I've let them cool for about 10 minutes. Let's take a look at one and see how they look. Now, the real test of any English muffin is how they look when you break them apart. From here, if you want to, you can definitely toast them or whatever. Or just go around them with a fork. And let's open it up and see how it looks. Look at that. Perfect. Looks exactly the way an English muffin should look. I've got some of the homemade peach jam that Sarah made last fall. I'm going to put that on there and see how it tastes. Perfect. Now, nobody ever does a cooking video and says, "Oh, that's terrible." But I guarantee this isn't terrible. This is exactly how an English muffin should be, and you guys will absolutely love making this recipe. Well, I hope you enjoyed learning how to make English muffins. This is something that I wanted to learn for a really long time, and I'll be honest, I shied away from it. But ever since I started making these, our family has loved them. I hope you guys will give this a try. If you do, post a picture on Instagram and tag us on it so that we can see how awesome yours turned out as well. If you're not a subscriber to our channel yet, hit that subscribe button before you leave. If you want to help support our channel, the best way to do that is to share our videos. Share them with anybody that you think might enjoy our lifestyle. You can live a life that you absolutely love without being caught up in the rat race. You guys, until next time, thank you so much for stopping by the homestead. Take care, and God bless.